start. Okay. Now we are starting with the vertical bar charts. So if you are going to generate your bar plots, of course, you need values, you need data, you need information. So let's take a look at this spreadsheet here. Okay, so let's have something like this. Just put this here. All right. So let's take a look at this spreadsheet. So here we have samples. Okay, these are sample IDs. And for each of those samples, we have their respective SNP counts. Okay, so if you are going to generate a bar chart, you need the values, which is here. And also you need to make sure you have labels that will allow you to associate those bars with their respective samples, which are here. So we need to make sure this information is available to R. All right, so we need to create this. Okay, so let's go back to R and then let's start. So I'll start with the SNP count. All right. So with a SNP count, I have it like this. And then it's a variable. So I'll need to add that information. All right. So I have what? 17, 10, 2, 13. This is a vector, by the way. So because we have multiple values, we need to add this C to it. This is numeric. So you create your variable, bring your C, and in brackets, you specify the values. We have 4 values because we are dealing with 4 samples. So that's what we have here. Now I'll run the script. Okay, or let me just say command. Okay, we are running just this line, so it's a command. Okay, so to run, you come to this side and you can click on run. This will run it, or you can use the Alt key and then enter. On your keyboard, there's the Alt, A-L-T, and then the enter key. So use both, and then the line will also be executed, or the command will be executed. So those are 2 ways you can use to execute your commands in R Studio, to be specific. Okay, so I have the SNP count. All right. Now I can just print it. Let's say SNP count, just to make sure I have what I need. So I have them here: 17, 10, 2, 3. Okay, so that is fine. Now I also need the sample IDs. I have the values. Let's go back to the spreadsheet. I have the values. I also need this information. It's very, very important. All right. So we'll go back. So I'll say sample ID. And then again, I'll use the vector object. So this is C. Then for the sample IDs, they are characters. So they have to be in quotes. So you can use double quotes or single quotes. So double quote, you start P001. I bring another double quote again. Okay, so this is for the first sample. That's P001. So we do same for P002. Okay, we do same for P003. And then we do same for P004. Okay, so let's all type this. Let's make sure we type them as we see. All right, so that we are on the same page. So have it like this. And then let's continue. So I have that also created. Again, I can use the print statement to say sample ID. I have them there. That is fine. Okay, so we have what we need. So now let's start the plots. Let's say plot the bar charts. So in R, if you want to plot, okay, there are different packages available, but we are using, in this tutorial, we are using the bar plot function in R. It's inbuilt, so you don't need any extra package. Okay, so we use bar plots. That's what we are going to use. So we have our value. So let's just plot that. So if you want to generate a bar plot, you say bar plot, and we specify the values that you are plotting. So I'll say SNP count. There's it. It's very, very simple and straightforward. So I'll execute the command, and then on the right side, I'll see my bar charts or bar plots, whichever one you want to call it. So I have it like this. All right. It's also possible to change the color. All right. So I'll plot again. This time I'll change the color. So we use bar plots again. We specify the value, and then we bring a comma and we say color, COL, like this, equals, and you specify your color. Okay, so I'll use blue as an example. So notice they are in quotes, so it can be single or double quotes, but I'm using single quotes. You can also use double quotes. So you have it like this. And with RStudio, if you specify a color and it's valid, then it will even display, or let's say it will highlight that text for you, the text representing that color. So here we see blue. It also gives us blue, indicating this is what we are going to see. All right. So this is how we change the color. So let's execute this command, and then let's see. So now I have my plots changing. Okay, the color has changed. So I have it like this. So it's good. We can also make it brown. That's what I displayed in the slide. We can also have it like this. Okay. Now let's reverse back to blue. But feel free to change the colors as you see fit. Okay. Now we have our bar plot here. We have 4 bars, but the question is, which is which? In the spreadsheet, we have 4 samples, and these are their respective snip counts. Now, if you are presenting this to someone, then it becomes confusing because the person doesn't know which bar belongs to which sample. So it's important to add that information. So what we are going to do is to add the bar label so that we know that this bar here belongs to samples, this, or this belongs to sample, this or this. So let's add that information. So we will proceed further. So let's say add bar labels. So again, we use bar plots. We specify our data. We bring our color, which is blue. And then we bring a comma. And then we say names.arg. So this is what we use to give labels to the bar that we have. So name.arg, and we say equal, and then we add sample ID. We created that information here. Sample ID. So there's it. We created it. So that's what we are adding here. Okay. So now let's execute this command. Nice. So after executing, we now have the sample IDs showing. Okay. And you should make sure that they are in the same order. So this one belongs to this belongs to this. So you need to make sure that they are in the same order. So the order in which you specify the data, it should be the same order in which you specify their respective labels, like this. All right, so that things move smoothly for you. So this is for the bar labels. Of course, we can still add more information. We have this bar chart, but then let's say someone wants to find out what is the meaning of the labels here. And these values, what do they represent? All right. And then there's no title. How do we add that? Okay, all these things will make our plots look visually appealing and more understandable. All right. So let's do this. We've added the bar labels. Now let's add the X and Y labels. So if we want to add X and Y labels, again, bar plot snip counts. We bring our color. Name.arg, which we have already done. Comma, and then this time you add something less. Okay. So for X label, we say X lab equals. And then here you can specify what those labels represent. So they are samples. So I'll say sample. What about the Y labels? So it's Y lab equals. Those ones represent what? Number of snips. So you also put them like this. Okay. So you can have it like this. All right. And that'll be fine. So I'll just try to bring this here a bit. that we see all of them. Okay, so the same command here, and then you add this information. Comma xlab, you specify your label, and then the y lab, you specify what it is. Okay, so this will be for the x and y labels. Now, if there's too much information on the line, you can just put some of them in a separate line. So after, let's say this comma, after the name.ask sample ID, the comma there, you leave it and you hit enter. Okay, when you hit enter, make sure that comma is here. When you hit enter, the rest will come to the next line. Okay, so that would also be good for you so that you avoid cramping up a single line with a lot of information. So you can have it like this, and then you can also run it. So let's execute this command. Nice. So once you execute it, you are going to see what? The X and Y label. So we have sample, we have number of snips. So now it's taking shape. Okay, so now at least anyone looking at this bar chart will understand, will have a general idea of what this represents. All right, so basically we have bar chart, okay, representing number of snips, and then we have the respective labels, okay, or samples. Okay, so here we know that sample P001, the number of snips is, let's say 17 or around 17 or 18. Okay, you can just do some estimation here. And of course, if you have the actual data, you can pinpoint the exact value. All right. The same for these other samples. So we have them here. All right. Now let's add a title. So add a title. So if it's a title, okay, we add the same codes. And this time when we come here, we add a comma. And then we say main equals, and then you give your title. It can be in single quotes or double quotes. Let's say double quotes. Okay, and in between the double quotes, you place your title. So I'll say snip counts. You can use any title, so that's fine. So this is what we have here. Okay, so you can see gradually we have added on, we have built upon the basic bar chart, and now we have all this information, right? So this is for the title. So let's run it. And now we have that also here. You can change the title, give it your name, that's great, someone's name, or even use the Bioinformatics Coach channel, that's also fine, okay, or tutorials. Okay, so this will be what? A vertical bar chart. Okay, so that's what we have here. Now, sometimes you may want to add data labels. Let's just check the slide I showed. We have something like this. Sometimes you may want to add data labels, the values, like this. So it's also possible to do that. So we are going to look at how to do that, all right? Now, before we do that, let's look at this initial plot here. So the initial plot we have here, we see that if you look at the Y values, okay, it's up to 15, and this one extends, okay? So we also need to correct for that. And then we also need to make sure we put the labels in such a way that they are not in the plots themselves, but outside the plots. So that means above. That means after plotting, we give the exact values above them like this. So we are adding on. So this is what we are going to do next. So let's move back to the R Studio and then work on that. All right. So now we are going to do this. We are adding data labels. All right. So for data labels, we need to do some additional tasks. All right. First, we need to correct for the range of values that are displayed or plotted. Okay. So we need to set a range for the display of these values. Okay, the X and Y values. Okay, so we need to give a range. So we will need to work on that first, and then we can continue. So I repeat, we need to set a range of values that are on the Y axis. All right. So we have to do this so that it also accommodates, also factors in the P01 value. If you take a look at the spreadsheet we should, or let's even use the values here. I have them here. We have 17, 10 to 13. But here it's up to 15. Okay, we need to make sure we have that as well here. And after that, we can proceed. So if you are going to add data labels, it's important to factor in the range of values that are on the y-axis. All right. So we will need to set that first. Okay, so to do that, we have to use the ylim, okay, option. That means we need to first define a y limit, okay, on the y-axis. Okay, so I'll do this. I'll first say y-axis limit. Then I'll define it. So here it's also going to be a vector. So low, high, okay, or start end, whichever you want to call it. Okay, so first 0, comma, and then I bring the upper. So this is the lower limit. This is 0, and then the upper limit. So the upper limit, we want something above 17. Okay, so that we can have 17 in, or let's say on the y-axis. Let me put it that way. So here we are going to use this strategy. We are first going to get the maximum value for the snip count data, which is here. Let's check it out. We are going to get the maximum value, which is 17, and then add additional values. Okay, so that that additional value will ensure that the 17 is on the y-axis. Okay, so to do that, it's straightforward. This is the strategy we are going to use. We will just say max snip count. Okay, so the max snip count plus, or star, let's use star. Okay, that's multiplication, multiply by 1.2. okay, you can do it this way, or you can really say plus. It doesn't matter, just make sure you have a value that exceeds the maximum. Okay, so you have max snip count multiplied by 1.2. okay, so this 1.2 I got it from page, and that was also showing how to generate bar plot. I'll link that page in the description box. But the most important thing is to know that you need to get a value that exceeds the maximum value for the data that you are plotting. That's basically what this means. All right, so this is what I have here. All right, so this becomes the y-axis limit. Here we are focusing on just the y-axis. Okay, so we need something like this. All right, so now we can execute it to get it done. You can still print y-axis limit just to make sure you have it here. Okay, so we have 0, 20.04. All right, so here you could even say max snip count plus 3. That also works, but let's just keep it simple like this. Okay, so we can change it. So instead of multiply by 1.2, you can say plus 3 or plus 4. Right. So let's maintain it this way. So now we have our y-axis limit. Now we also need to first generate the bar plots. Okay, so here what we are going to do, we are going to generate the bar plot, but we are going to assign to a variable. Okay, we are going to assign to a variable. So let's say assign the bar plot to a variable. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. We are adding data labels. So for data labels, we use the text function, which requires x and y values. Okay, so the x value is what we are generating now. Okay, let me just put this here. So for data labels, we use the text function, which requires x and y values. All right, so the x value is what we are setting. Okay, so first we need to set the y limits for the bar plots or bar chart, whichever one you want to call it. All right, and then we now assign the bar plot to a variable. That's what we are going to do next. Okay, so assign the bar plot to a variable. Let's see. So to do that, you do this. Let's check it out first. That's what we are going to do. We'll say bar plots objects, and then we'll plot. So we say bar plots snip count, and then we bring the y-lim. Okay, that's the y-limit equals y-axis limit. We set that here, and then we bring the other information. Okay, so for example, color equals blue, or this time we can say color equals brown. Let's change it a bit. Color equals brown, comma, and then we go to a new line. We say what? Name.add equals sample ID, comma. You can say xlab equals what? Sample ylab equals what? Number of snips, comma, and we say what? Main equals what? Snip count. Okay, so we first have to assign this to a variable. Okay, the plot itself. All right, let's just make sure everything is okay. So we have our snip count, we have our y limits, which we have set, we have our color, we have our bar labels, we have our x, y labels, we have our title. So we need to run this first to get that variable. Okay, we have it like this. All right, and then we can add the text. We'll use the text function. Okay, so I'll say text into brackets. We need x and y values. So x will be equals to the bar plot object, comma. Okay, and then the y here, the y becomes this individual bars. Okay, but then what we need to understand is that we are setting it above the bar plots themselves. So we also need to have a value, okay, or a location, okay, a point where the plots or where the labels will be indicated. Okay, we need to have a place. Okay, so that is what these are. So these are more like coordinates, or let's say the area where the plot should be. So x is for the bar plot objects, we have them, and then the y is going to be their respective values plus 1, because we don't want them to be exactly on their values. Okay, so we add an information. So we say y equals snip count plus 1, because we want them above the bars themselves, the plot themselves. So that's why we are adding plus 1. So plus 1 means the plot themselves, where the end just above it, that's plus 1. That's what we have here. So let's plot this, and then let's look at what we have. Okay, now once we have this, okay, we also need to add the labels themselves. Okay, we need to plot, but then we have x, y, we need the labels. So I'll say labels equals snip counts. So labels, we are using the respective values themselves as the labels. Okay, so that's what you have. So you need the x, you need the y, you also need the labels. Okay, the labels become the values themselves. All right, so let's run this command, and when we run it, you will see that we now have our final data here. It's looking very nice and good. So we have our bar plots. We have also added the data labels. Now the data labels themselves, so you can change the colors. Okay, so if let's say you want to use a different color, let's say blue for the labels, It's the same thing, okay, that we have here. Let's set color. So the same, but this time when we come here, we add color. You can say equals blue, and then you can run it. So this will change the color for you. Okay, so it's also possible to change the colors of the data labels. All right. So that is what we have here. Okay, so it's a cool thing that we are doing here. Okay, with for data visualization. All right, so let's continue the good job we are doing. Okay, so this is for what? The vertical bar.